This is Janice of Dorval. The International Radio Report presents 30 minutes of news, information, and commentary on developments in the world of radio every Sunday morning at 10:30 on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal and online at ckut.ca.
Welcome, everybody, to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. It is Sunday, June the 23rd. And to all our listeners here in the province of Quebec, we wish you a happy Fête Nationale coming up on Monday, June the 24th. We have 30 minutes of news and information for you. My name's Sheldon, and I am here with Sheila. We will check out what is going on in the world of radio out there. We have quite a few international stories and a couple other stories of interest, one talking about AI and another one looking at where people listen to the radio. So we're going to start out with that one. We're always hearing stories about how radio is dying and nobody's listening anymore and all of those misconceptions about radio. So Gilles, we'll start off with a interesting survey.
Yep. Apparently, a study of Workday listening shows continues resilience of AM/FM radio. This is via Inside Radio. Results of a nationwide survey among more than 800 employed radio listeners ages 18 and up shows that AM/FM remains strong as a Workday listening choice. The study conducted by Harker Boss Group in March of this year finds that 86% of the sample listen to audio while working, with 69% of those audio listeners having it either most of, 45%, or the entire workday, 24%. The results are startling, especially if you're a boss or hold any sort of management position. Harker Boss Group's Sean Boss says, "Given today's attention economy and the variety of distractions available at a moment's notice to the modern worker, you might think that this 86% listening is to be expected. That is, until you factor in how long the radio listener is in fact listening to audio. As for what workers are listening to, radio itself remains a significant choice, with 71% saying they listen to music on the radio, while 16% mention news or news talk, and 16% listening to sports. Streaming audio and podcasts are mentioned by 81% and 35% respectively. These numbers demonstrate the continuing resilience of over-the-air AM/FM radio. 71% listening to music on the radio for substantial periods of time. Boss notes the connection between radio listeners and listening for long periods of time while on the job. What becomes increasingly apparent is that radio listenership indicates a predisposition towards generally high levels of audio consumption on the job, regardless of the source. Any level of radio listenership is likely to correlate with high levels of audio consumption more broadly, whether it be on the job or in other contexts. When you are bitten by the audio bug, you just cannot resist getting your fill. You know, it's part of kind of the interest in a workplace. I've worked several places where radio was there, and it was there all day. Most of the time we were in a music format for where I would work. We would listen to either Sham FM. I remember we would listen to, sometimes there was a place where their favorite was what is called Virgin Radio today, especially when you're working and doing like these dull, repetitive jobs that it's always the same thing time after time. That distraction of having music and even having somebody talking on the radio. And it, we talk about the car is a place for audio and for radio. The workplace is definitely second place, a strong second place for sure.
Yeah, I think the talk radio would be a little more distracting possibly, though, for workers, depending on the type of work that they're doing. But I can certainly see music in the background. I mean, we've had music in the background on elevators, in restaurants, in, shopping malls, what have you. Just having that kind of background noise is probably part of the reason for it. Particularly if you're in a noisy work environment as well, to have something else to sort of counter that would make a lot of sense. Sports, I don't know, that might be a little distracting as well, again, depending on the type of job that you're on. But certainly it's encouraging to see that, they are using radio. I have seen some places, though, using Sirius XM. I've noticed that because the music being played is uninterrupted. And I've actually checked with a couple places that I go to every once in a while, and it is they do have a Sirius XM subscription, and they have that playing because there is no advertising, whatever. If if you're in a restaurant and you don't want ads for other restaurants coming up on your music in your establishment, so I think that makes sense that some of them have gone to Sirius XM. I worked one place where they had a radio set up and it was playing through it was a retail outlet, and the radio was slightly off frequency. So it was an FM station and it was kind of scratchy and fading in and out a little bit. And then I realized I should check that. Took a look, and yeah, it was an analog dial radio. It was just slightly off, so it needed to be tweaked just a touch, and away it cleared everything up. So something you have to be aware of as well, I guess. We move to our next story, and this is something I think we're going to be hearing more and more and more about. We're already getting bombarded by stories about AI, and AI is tying into radio, television, media all over the place. This story is by Sheila Dang from Reuters News Service. Global audiences suspicious of AI-powered newsrooms, a report finds. Global concerns about the use of AI in news production and misinformation are growing, a report published by the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism found, posing fresh challenges to newsrooms already struggling to engage audiences. The Institute's annual digital news reports published on Monday, which this year is based on surveys of nearly 100,000 people across 47 countries, offers a picture of the hurdles news media faces in lifting revenue and sustaining business. Newsrooms globally are working to address a new challenge with generative artificial intelligence as tech giants and startups like Google and OpenAI build tools that can offer summaries of information and siphon traffic from news websites. But the report found that consumers are suspicious about the use of AI to create news content, particularly for sensitive subjects such as politics. According to the survey, 52% of US respondents and 63% of UK respondents said they would be uncomfortable with news produced mostly with AI. The report surveyed 2,000 people in each country, noting that respondents were more comfortable with behind-the-scenes uses of AI to make journalists' work more efficient. It was surprising to see the level of suspicion, said Nick Newman, Senior Research Associate with the Reuters Institute and lead author of the Digital News Report. People broadly had fears about what might happen to content reliability and trust. Concerns about false news content online rose by 3% points from last year, with 59% of survey respondents saying they were worried. This figure was higher in South Africa and the US at 81 and 72% respectively, as both countries hold elections this year. Another challenge facing news organizations is a general unwillingness of audiences to pay for news subscriptions. Following some growth during the pandemic, 17% of respondents across 20 countries said they paid for online news, a figure that has been unchanged for the past 3 years, the report said. A significant proportion of news subscribers in the US were also likely to be paying discounted rates due to trials or promotions, with 46% paying less than the full price for their subscriptions. News influencers are playing a bigger role than mainstream media organizations in delivering the news to users of popular online platforms like TikTok. In a survey of more than 5,600 TikTok users who said they use the app for news, 57% said they mostly paid attention to individual personalities versus 34% who said they mainly follow journalists or news brands. The findings show that newsrooms need to build a direct relationship with their audiences while also strategically using the platforms to connect with people who are trickier to reach, like younger audiences, Newman said. We see that these influencers have a bigger role on the platforms. So lots of new challenges out there, lots of new developments. People are trying things out. AI is being tested in all kinds of different fields. But as these survey numbers show, people are a little bit concerned about just how accurate, how complete, and I guess how true some of these reports are going to be.
AI right now is still not perfect, and it often gathers its information from a lot of news sources, and it has a hard time making the difference or having a difference between the true news, the fake news, and all of what's in between. And often the news reports that it will actually get out are not 100% accurate. There'll be some problems with maybe some facts or some of the news items it wants to talk about. So it's normal that people are not very comfortable listening or checking out any news that AI will bring. Now, that's probably going to get better over time. But for now, we still have that, it's machine learning. It's kind of weird. And it's, I think, human nature to trust more a human than a machine also at the same time. The other thing about influencers, I do my tech channel and I do have tech news items every day. And it's very true that people will listen to some specific person more than another. There's a factor about, when you love someone, when you trust someone, that's your news source. And it's becoming more important many times than actual big gun newspapers or news outlets.
Yeah, I think that's why some of the news outlets, particularly newsprint, is really struggling right now. People have got so much stuff available to them online, and like you said, they can pick their favorites, and maybe because of that, some of the local news sources are disappearing or struggling to keep people subscribing to their newspapers or magazines or what have you. All of these developments, and AI in particular, I think are going to have a big impact on a lot of the ways we do things, and in particular in the media, as far as we're concerned, with radio, television, etc. So it's something we'll be covering as it goes along. I'm sure we're going to be getting a lot more stories about this as we start to get exposure to AI-generated media.
So in our next news item, we have a Japanese AM distributes FM receivers. So this is by T. Carter Ross from Radioworld. NBC Radio Saga in Saga Prefecture, Japan, is giving away 2,000 small FM radios to help listeners disconnected by the suspension of its AM services. Earlier in 2024, Japanese broadcasters began a one-year trial of suspending their AM services. The project allows stations and regulators to assess the impact of the loss of AM services on listeners, emergency response, and operating expenses. In total, 34 AM stations across the country are participating in this suspension. In Saga and Yamaguchi Prefecture, all of the commercial AM operators are participating. Nagasaki Broadcasting Corp said let NBC Radio Saga's 1458 kHz transmitter at Arita and its 1116 kHz transmitter at Imari go dark for the trial. Listeners can tune to the station via the streaming platform, Radico Cable Television, or via FM at 93.5 in Saga and 92.1 MHz in Tosu. But those FM channels are in what's known as the wide FM band. The two FM transmitters cover about 95% of Saga Prefecture, according to the station. Since 2014, Japan has licensed AM repeater services in the wide FM band from 90 to 94.9 MHz, but many receivers only tune the traditional Japanese FM band of 76.1 to 89.9 MHz. According to a report in the Mainichi Shimbun newspaper, NBC Radio Saga heard concerns from listeners about newer FM radios that it was shutting down entirely. In response, the station began distributing 2,000 small wide FM capable receivers at events across the prefecture. The station scheduled the first distribution of 100 receivers for June 15th at the Youngtown Saga Shopping Center. Because of the expected demand, NBC Radio held a lottery for the units. Listeners had to register, and 100 names were chosen to receive the radio sets. The FM receiver distribution program will continue through the rest of the year. At least they are trying to help out with people that lost their AM reception and might not even know or aren't even sure how exactly to deal with this. And the way that they're actually doing it on the FM band seems kind of a little complicated. You know, here we have just one FM band and that's it. And there they kind of are talking about a wide FM band, and there's that frequency range they're talking about on old FM receivers. And it's like, okay, this does sound weird. It sounds complicated to know exactly what radio should I have to listen to all of this. So they're doing something about it, and I guess that experiment is still going on. So there will probably be a result at sometime the end of the year where, okay, what do? We turn them back on, or we continue the way it is right now?
I know if some of the people had older shortwave radios, for example, like I know the older Sony radios used to go down to 76 megahertz on FM, and they would go up to the full 108. So they would work in Japan, and they would also work in other parts of the world where we would go up to, like here, for example, up to the 108 megahertz. But this is interesting that unlike a few countries that just decided that's it, we're pulling the plug on AM and go figure out, where to find us on FM. At least they're making an effort here to kind of break it in slowly and see how people are going to react to it and get them used to what's happening.
Yeah, definitely interesting. And I guess, they'll see if it's worth it to shut down AM, continue that work. But contrary to a lot of other countries like in Europe where it's just gone, they're really working on kind of a standard. They're working on the future of it, how we're going to deal with it.
The sun has been causing a major impact here in the Montreal region this past week with record-setting June temperatures. Something's happening with the sun. It's heating up, I think. But what's happening with it propagation-wise?
So, yes, apart from the fact that it's been extremely hot and we tried to avoid it all week, radio-wise, it's difficult to avoid because it has all sorts of impact. There's been quite a few. It's been rather quiet if you consider the amount of big sunspot that could flare, but it's been giving us some great propagation. And there are a little bit of flares. There's new sunspot 3712 and 3713 that have what it takes for powerful flares. Still, it's kind of quiet right now. A lot of these sunspots are actually, if you still have your solar glasses from the eclipse, visible when you actually use the solar glasses. So for now, it's rather quiet, but it is still high solar activity. The sunspot number 138, the solar flux at 196. Now, the sunspots through the week will be rotating out of view, which will probably quiet down the different conditions unless something big or new happens on the sun. So I'm kind of expecting that it might be quiet this week, but still with very good propagation out there for the radio listening. And the only way to witness all of this is to turn on a radio and listen.
I'm Brian Penny of Brewster, Massachusetts. You're tuned to the International Radio Report. 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
We take you next to Africa for a couple of stories. First off, from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Armed men take over community radio stations and threaten journalists in the DRC. This is via RadioInfo Africa. Personnel of the Democratic Republic of Congo's National Army have taken over the premises of 2 community radio stations in the east of the country that is engulfed by armed conflict. Radio communautaire et environnementale de Kanyabayonga was shut down on Saturday, June the 1st, after soldiers of the armed forces of the DRC burst into its premises in Lubero territory in North Kivu, a conflict zone between the military and the M23 rebels. The journalists present all fled, leaving the radio station located on a hill in the hands of soldiers who had come to occupy it for strategic reasons. They now fear that the bombardments will reach these installations and destroy the radio's equipment. On the 10th of June, explosives had already damaged part of its radio tower. The premises of another community radio station, Radio Madaleo Kaseji, located on a hill in Lubero, were also raided by National Army soldiers on June the 2nd. The clashes between militia and members of the National Army left journalists largely exposed and caught in the crossfire. Our equipment was damaged during the attack, and the journalists narrowly escaped death, said the director of the station. He was forced to stop broadcasting and flee Lubero with his colleagues. According to Director Marong of Radio Sans Frontières Sub-Saharan African Office, community radio stations run by local journalists are a valuable source of information, particularly in war zones. The fact that they are being held hostage by the military, trapping them under the fire of war, prevents journalists from doing their job and deprives tens of thousands of inhabitants of their right to information, Marong said. This is a serious attack on press freedom to which the Congolese authorities must react urgently so that free information does not disappear in the east of the DRC. However, the report says targeting of local media such as community radio stations is not a new phenomenon, as the journalists are direct victims of the conflict between the FARDC and the M23 rebels in the provinces of North Kivu. Radio Sans Frontières reported that since February, Radio Communautaire Sake, also located on a hilltop in North Kivu, has also been occupied by soldiers, the FARDC and Wazalendo militiamen, a coalition operated alongside the Congolese army, who have looted the equipment, forcing the staff to flee to Goma, the capital of North Kivu province. It says the rebels also looted the premises of Radio Bashali, located in the eponymous town, on February the 3rd. This was the second attack after the ones in June 2022 against La Voix de Mikeno station in Bunagana, in the same region, which was also looted and ransacked by armed rebels, the report revealed. In July 2023, M23 rebels ordered radio station managers to suspend a popular radio program for 2 months. Members of the M23 have on several occasions visited the premises of radio stations producing or broadcasting the program to threaten and intimidate them, the report further noted. The DRC is ranked 123rd out of 180 countries in Radio Sans Frontières World Press Freedom Index for 2024. So another country where operating radio stations is a dangerous, dangerous business.
Yep, and we have a similar story here about 4 radio stations banned in Guinea. This is via RadioInfo Africa. Guinea's junta government has banned 4 major private radio stations and 1 private television channel, the Ministry of Information said on Wednesday. The Ministry of Information said the operating licenses of radio station FIM FM, Radio Espace FM, Suite FM, and Joma FM, as well as Joma TV, were withdrawn over a failure to comply with the content of the specifications, it said, although it did not give further details. The ban follows a string of restrictions imposed on the media by the junta, which seized power in the West African nation in 2021. Media watchdog Reporters Without Borders condemned this situation and called on the government to stop the repression on the media. The repression of the media must stop, RSF said, adding that the authorities had committed to unblocking an already dramatic situation for media outlets. 4 private radio stations have been constantly jammed since November, 3 private television channels are virtually inaccessible, and at least 3 news sites were blocked for several weeks in 2023, according to RSF's website. At the end of 2023 and beginning of 2024, the authorities also restricted internet access for several weeks and detained a press union leader for more than a month, prompting a general strike. Guinea is ranked 78th out of 180 countries in the Watchdog's 2024 Press Freedom Ranking. Once again, a lot of places in Africa are kind of not going in the right direction. What do you do when your country is the people that are in power don't want all of the info to get out? Well, any radio station that has any news or anything to say that just goes against the government rules, well, let's shut them down. Let's send the army. Let's do something to scare them off, remove their licenses, and say not have any reasons actually for it, but just remove the license and nobody can speak.
Yeah, they either do that or they actually send the people in to destroy the radio station, destroy the equipment. We've had even more dire cases that we've reported on over the months past where broadcasters have been killed, broadcasters have been injured, taken captive, arrested, what have you. You know, all of this leads to us preaching about the importance of external media, shortwave broadcasting in particular, that can reach into and beyond the borders of countries to get information to people where their local outlets have been suppressed. You know, digital or internet is not the way to get to those people. They're having enough trouble just trying to stay alive and get whatever information they can. So, it's really sad, when we keep hearing about services being cut, particularly international broadcasting, and we see how important a service it can be to places like these 2 countries, for example, in Africa. Just
listen to the BBC World Service. I've been doing that daily, and I can tell you, you will learn about a lot of things happening in Africa that you have no idea.
Yeah, we've always said that about the BBC. They seem to have somebody, a reporter, 5 minutes away from just about everything that happens out there on the planet. So you do hear stories that don't get covered in other places, and they do focus on particularly parts of the world where media is difficult to obtain locally. So, we really, really appreciate those services, and we wish that there were more of them out there.
So we are out of time.
Yeah, we have no events or contests coming up this next weekend. Next week, though, we will have information on the upcoming Canada Day contest organized by the Radio Amateurs of Canada on Canada's birthday, July the 1st. So tune in next week for all the information on that big event coming up. That is it. We thank you for tuning in this week, and we hope you'll do so again next week. In the meantime, you can reach us by email, radioreport@yahoo.com. You can listen to our program live streaming or archived at ckut.ca, the website for CKUT Radio here in Montreal. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report, we invite you to join the group. Our YouTube channel, where we hit our 1,000th subscriber this week. You can find us there on youtube.com/@IRR, where you can listen to our shows at your convenience. And our X account is at IRRCKUT. We invite you to follow us there. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you again next Sunday with our next edition of the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Radio Polonia.